call to order the November 14th City of New Bern Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Will you please all rise and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to our country? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. I'm going to start off with Board Member Kyle Bern.
Here.
Board Member Danielle Peoples.
Here.
Board Member Kip Parador.
Here.
Chairman Brad Jefferson.
Here.
Board Member Rusty Ingram.
Here.
Board Member Kelly Kaiser. Just let the record show she's absent. And Board Member Thomas Brownell.
Here.
And Board Member Marshall Ballard. And let the record show Mr. Ballard is absent as well. But Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Entertain a motion on approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as is.
Second.
Approval on a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to chairman's remarks. Just light night tonight. We did have the consultant for land use ordinance back a couple weeks ago. They did a series of focus groups. So far, I haven't seen minutes from those, but I understand those were successful. And they should be back in November, later this month or December. When are they coming back?
I'm hopeful that maybe December.
Okay.
Probably.
All right.
That's what I would say.
Okay, good. All right, so December will be good. Given that, I'm going to open with a couple things here about the board for the public. Just like to provide some background and context of the role of the Planning and Zoning Board. The responsibilities of this Planning and Zoning Board this evening include approval of general and final subdivision plots and making recommendations to the Board of Aldermen concerning zoning text and map amendments. 7 members of this board are appointed by the Board of Aldermen and must reside in the city. Each member is appointed by the Craeberne County. One member is appointed by the Craeberne County Board of Commissioners and resides within the city's extraterritorial planning area. This board is an advisory authority to the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen acts as its legislative capacity and follows voting procedures as part of official meetings. The Board of Aldermen is not bound by the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Board. While there are 5 action items this evening, we will have a staff report. We will then take public comment, limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and they will have applicant remarks. This order and public hearing protocol reflects the board's recently adopted rules and procedures. And just a brief comment on public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Again, comments should be directed to the board and city staff and be relevant to the action item being discussed. Groups, organizations, neighborhoods, or other similar associations may appoint one spokesperson to present their points of view to the board. Please note this is a comment period, so the board is not taking or responding to questions during this step. And having said that, we'll move on to the action items. 6A, Craeberne Crossing, Phase 3, Section A, B, and C, General Plan.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the board. This is the first item here for Craeberne Crossing Phases 3, Section A, B, and C, and this is for a general plan. This is also a major subdivision. It is 002-911-2024. Request summary here, the applicant is Paramounte Engineering, Inc., and the owners are McCullough Farms, LLC, BRDL, Craeberne Forests, LLC, and Mr. Land and Timber, LLC. The location is Savoy Drive, New Bern, North Carolina. The existing zoning districts that apply are residential 6.
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
That's good.
The existing zoning districts are residential 6, R-6 is the abbreviation, residential 10 or R-10, residential 10A or R-10A. The size is 268.72 total acres. There's a portion of it essentially that's being used, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's 117.36 acres for the proposed development. And the proposed here in the overview is a subdivision for 351 lots. This is to be separated between 161 single-family detached dwellings and 190 single-family attached townhomes. The subject properties are currently zoned, again, residential 6, residential 10, and residential 10A. These are established districts in accordance with the City of New Bern's land use ordinance. And the purpose for the residential districts, as always before, is for comfortability, promoting health and safety, and essentially a pleasant environment to live. And first, we have the vicinity map here, and this is just reflecting the differences of parcels that are for the actual proposed development. And that's followed by the buffer map. The buffer map is essentially for us to take 100 feet of buffer around the property lines to serve as the mailed notice to the different adjacent owners. So anybody who's inclusive to that 100 feet should have actually got a notice for our mail notices requirement. And that's followed by the aerial map, and the aerial is just giving you an indication as to what's on the ground. And then you have here the zoning map, which reflects the differences of districts based on the colors. So the R-, again, R-6, the R-10, and the R-10A. And lastly, the plat. Essentially, the general plan is here for review as well. So just hopefully, if you have any questions, you can defer some of or place some of those to the applicant, but the plan will be on view after, just so that they can comment on it. Staff's evaluation, the proposed subdivision does meet all requirements set forth within the City of New Bern's land use ordinance, and all comments from the Departmental Review Committee have been addressed. I'd like to add, just so to clear any confusion, there was several conversations that were entertained between Public Works and the Fire Department with this particular item. Those items and, I guess, conversations have addressed all the concerns and the DRC comments that came from both the Fire Department and Public Works. So there's emails that were provided, because we were all inclusive into the chain, to address these issues, and they basically stated these items are good to move forward. So as far as for Craeberne, sorry. And if the board has any questions, I'll take those at this time.
Board have any questions for Kendrick?
Kendrick, just a clarification, we're approving the general plan, not the final plat. So
This-
the applicant will come back to us for the final plat?
Yes,
approval?
ma'am, that's correct. This is a general plan.
Kendrick, I had a little bit of trouble following the property line of the detailed general plan and the property line of the area that proposed in the larger block. You said there was 117 acres in the general plan?
Yes, so basically the focal point is the 117.36 acres. There was some issues involving a secondary access that needed to be worked through. So the increase in acreage came from those properties essentially. It's not specific to the development, it's a secondary access that was required through the fire department. That was one of their comments. So the what you're seeing here is the current focus for the actual development, this plat here.
Okay, but even if I look at that in the area map that you sent us, the property lines are hard to follow, and I don't know that they, especially this one little dip down in here, I can follow it off of the proposed right-of-way across, and they'll turn, and then it dips down into, it makes an incursion into the property line, and that never shows up in the general plan. So there's either some missing land, or there's some land that's
I would have to
excluded
try
from
to,
that.
I would have to try to double check to see if that is missing, but in accordance with what they submitted, it seemed accurate based on what we reviewed, but we can absolutely double check, and also I can let the applicant try to maybe answer that as well.
Okay.
Any further questions for Kendrick?
So Kendrick, can you go back to the parcel map, please?
Sure.
So you're talking about this area, the red area that comes from like on the left-hand side, 2/3 of the way up the page, all the way to the bottom. That's where the fire and safety road is going to go through.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, it extends south to the southern portion of the property, basically.
Right. And So one of the questions I had about this was, it seems that it depends, I guess, on when the highway is going to go in, the extension 43.
To my knowledge, this should not be dependent on that. That was a concern with Mr. Gaskins, the gentleman who works for the fire department. You have to excuse me, I don't know a specific title, but that was what was being addressed in accordance to the secondary access for this parcel, if it was a large concern. So he was actually in works with the applicant through and through to make sure that the justification of the easements were recorded, and that has all been processed, and I believe I included that in the packet. So just to make sure that it was settled out properly.
Well, that's the fire and safety road that goes down, right, as a secondary egress point.
Right.
Right. And I get all that. But it's not going to be used for residents.
Not that I'm aware of.
So now you've got 600 lots all going out through Savoy Drive
Right.
in one area, and there's no concern about traffic until that 43 connector gets.
So we don't have the
completed.
ability to require a TIA. Really, realistically, the only ones that I'm aware of would be NCDOT, but if it's a city-owned road and it's pertaining to the city, we still don't have that ability, so we can't make that a requirement. But I do understand what you're saying. There was some differences that were brought up about that as well. That's why partially this was encouraged highly from the fire department and required through them. I understand that residents won't necessarily be accessing that as a point of entry, but if in the event of an emergency, at least there's a secondary access.
Okay.
Ms. Bullock, is that something that could be addressed in the land use update, these traffic studies? It's something I hear all the time up here. There's a traffic problem, there's too much traffic. Is that something that we could address to require?
Certainly in the focus groups that are coming out, that any of you are able to participate in, you can express those concerns. We're constrained about the types of standards that we can place in our land use ordinance by state statute. But if you're concerned about in what ways we can use our tools that are in the toolbox to address traffic, the appropriate venue to address that would be in those focus groups.
Okay, all right, then we will do that.
And
Any
Mr.
more?
Chairman, I'll get you the speaker list as well.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions for Kendrick? No? Okay. While Kendrick's doing that, I meant to read one other thing about this item. It's kind of what we're deciding here, this board. So this item falls under major subdivision general plan approvals. The board has the decision to approve the action reflecting the plan satisfies the technical requirements of the city's land use ordinance, or deny the action indicating the plan fails to satisfy the technical requirements of the city's land use ordinance. If the board finds that proposed subdivision fails to comply with one or more requirements to the city's land use ordinance, the motion must state the deficiency and the basis of which the proposed subdivision would be approved. And that would go for items 6A, B, C, and D, I believe. So just as an overhead here. Okay, so I've got 3 people signed up to speak. 2 of those, all 3 of those are applicants, but I will go ahead and open up a public, public comment on anyone that wants to speak for 3 minutes on this item. Seeing none, I will open it up to the board for deliberation.
I hear from the applicant.
Oh, well, the applicant would like to speak. Thank you, Kip. Kip saves me from time to time. Does a great job.
Good evening. My name is Allison Ingebretson. I am a landscape architect and land planner with Paramounte Engineering, here representing the applicant this evening. I also have with me this evening Tim Blinkscales with Paramounte and Jack Rostetter with the developers as a representative of the developer, also landowner of Phase 3. So I think I can address a couple of the questions and concerns that were brought forward. So let me start with the secondary access and the acreage questions. So the plan that you see up on your screen, you see the dark portion that's shaded on the left-hand side of the screen. That is what we call Phase 4. Phase 3 is the piece that we're here to talk about tonight. The reason that both of these are before you on this plan is that we came before the Planning and Zoning Board a year ago and got approval on the entirety of the development. So we are only coming back to make modification to phase 3, putting phase 4 to the side. Only showed it for reference for anyone that may remember it coming through last year. So the reason that we are here making a modification is we had a multifamily portion of the site in the upper portion of phase 3. We have taken that out. Our developer does not want to do multifamily and has moved forward with single-family detached and attached homes that you see here. So that's the reason that we're here. That is the reason for some of the acreages looking a little off. We show a total acreage of all of the parcels that were previously approved, the current 117 that we're considering here tonight for subdivision approval, and then, of course, the secondary access is the remainder of that acreage. Those tracts are quite large and long and skinny, so it adds up to quite a bit of acreage. So I hope that helps clarify, but if you have further questions, certainly let me know.
Board have questions?
Yeah, if we go back to, Kendrick, if you could pull up the red area map, there's a white block there above the crosshatched that is actually included in this redevelopment. I mean, in the plan the general plan.
Which, are you talking on the northern side?
No, to the top of the page.
Above the two red crosshatch areas, I think is what Kip's referring to.
Yeah, this block right here is
It's not hashed.
It's not
They're not
hashed.
hashed yet.
I think I can clarify this.
Okay,
if
please.
possible. So what is happening, there are two parcels in what we call phase 4, which is to the left of phase 3 that we're considering this evening. That phase 4 piece on the bottom, that parcel that is on the bottom, is the one that provides a secondary access route through the MR timber land to the south. So it is included merely for making sure that everybody that needed to be notified was notified, and making sure that we were advertising it properly. There is no development going on there.
I think he's talking about the white area on top.
The white area on the top is part of phase 4, but it is a separate parcel and not part of what we're talking about. The secondary access does not go through that.
It's this block of land right here is this white block we're talking about.
Correct.
And that's not hashed as being part of.
It is not part of what we're requesting approval for. We're not here to talk about phase 4 at all tonight, other than for secondary access.
Well, the plat that we are given for the general plan, it says general plan on it, includes that piece of land up there.
Yes, sir. If I might recap, so showed it only for reference in case anyone was confused about our previous bringing forward phase 3 and 4. So it's shaded out on our plan and noted as not part of the phase 3. If you look at the site plan, we have some notes on there.
Can I approach and just get a clarification here? I'm confused. Let me see.
I have a full-size copy here that I
And
can point
it's
to.
probably just on information we've been provided that's causing the confusion.
Yeah, can you?
That's correct. You're just focused on phase 3. Even if the northern parcel looks to be included, it's not included.
And I'm so sorry if we made that confusing.
she's saying we're only looking at this. This we're not looking at, even though it's on the general plan. We're not concerned with this. We're only concerned with 3, which is why this is only shaded.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
it's shaded.
It's shaded all the way down through there too. I mean, this is,
Well, that's just for the fire and safety.
That's just that's only on there because of the, right, okay.
So I do have the full set of documents that was submitted, and I can outline, in the breakouts here of things that may further clarify for you and show the exhibits of the secondary access.
okay.
Would you like for her to do that, Kit?
I mean, what she drew out on this, I mean, why did we get this whole sheet, I guess is my question that causes all this confusion.
So the entirety of Craeberne Crossing was previously approved.
Mm-hmm.
So only because we are coming in to modify part of that previous approval, that's why we showed the entirety of what was.
Oh, no, I understand that process and phasing development, believe me, but that just, when we get these documents and look at them, there's questions and inconsistencies that we see that just cause a little bit of confusion.
Did you receive the entire packet of drawings?
Oh, no.
This is where we get.
That would explain why you're confused. Okay. All right. So we have about 167 pages that we submitted to help clarify all that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm happy to walk through anything that will further clarify it for you. But it is the zoning line that you see in the parcel.
Yep, I'll bring her up here and show you whatever you want.
No, I mean,
That's what you want.
what you drew out here, I mean, I understand the concept of
Okay.
what has happened there. We have 2 conflicting maps, I should say, that
Yeah.
have been given to us that cause the questions.
Understood. Understood.
Any more questions for the applicant?
If I could talk about the traffic impact analysis
Sure.
question.
Of course.
So we did actually complete a traffic impact analysis for this. The number of trips that 351 lots generates did require us to do a TIA, and it is approved, and we do have that within our packet as well. And there are traffic improvements the developer is required to put in on a phased scale as those lots go through. And I'm happy to walk through those with you if you'd like.
Who is the TIA approved by?
So it was a joint effort between the MPO and DOT. And in this case, because Highway 43 was part of the consideration, which I'll talk a little bit about in a moment, it also went up to Raleigh's DOT Congestion Management and through their office, which is a little bit higher than a lot of TIAs go through. So yes, I think we can say it's been vetted on a lot of levels.
So that TIA described the traffic of the 351 units plus the units that are to the southeast, because you're basically, until the 43 connector is completed, you're basically taking all that traffic through that neighborhood.
So let me talk about that a minute. Yes, is the answer to your question. It was, the timing was studied as well as the units and impact for the fully scoped area, yes. And one of the things that I'd like to point out about the development is Highway 43 is tentatively scheduled to be on the same construction timeline as this project. The idea is that second entrance onto 43, the actual full service entrance for all the residents, be timed at the same time that 43 open. So then that helps alleviate the traffic concerns that you were talking about. Now, of course, it's a DOT project. We all understand that. That is the reason that we have the secondary emergency access and part of all the conversations that have gone on around that. Just wanted to make sure everybody was kept safe.
Okay. I'm sure the future land or property owners of those properties you're selling would have some concerns about that if it wasn't exactly the same.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. If Raleigh approves it,
Okay.
And we can answer any additional questions you have. We've got our civil engineer and developer owner here for you.
appreciate that.
Any other questions from the board for the applicants? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'll open it up to the board.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the general plan of Craeberne Crossing Phase 3, Sections A, B, and C, as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6B, Scott and Donna Unkel Subdivision. Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is the next item here, Scott and Donna Unkel subdivision. This is a general plan and a final plat, which I know may seem a little different. However, basically, the applicant has submitted both at the same time. The objective, once I complete the presentation here, you're going to vote essentially on the general plan first, and then you're going to proceed to vote on the final plat immediately after. So this is for major subdivision 002-974-2024. That's the general plan number. And the final plat is major subdivision 002-975-2024. Request summary here is for Scott and Donna Unkel. The location is 310 North 1st Avenue, New Bern, North Carolina. And the existing zoning is residential 10 or R-10, and the size is 10.15 total or so acres. The lot that they're anticipating to cut out is 0.65 acres. The overview, the proposed subdivision is for the creation of one additional lot, and there was no specified use specific that the applicant mentioned, so they don't have to disclose that information. They can choose to withhold that. The subject property is currently, again, zoned R-10. This is established as a residential zoning district in accordance to the City of New Bern's land use ordinance. The purpose for the residential districts, once more, is for comfortability, health, safety, and just promoting a safe environment in which to live. Here is the first map, which is the vicinity map, and the parcel highlighted in red here is what is shown to being subject to a major subdivision. That's followed by the buffer map, which again, take the property lines, and we utilize 100 feet around the property lines to make sure we do the required mailed notice. So any properties that are within that buffer should have received the letter. And followed by the aerial map, and that's just giving you a reflection of what's on the ground. And the zoning map, which is indicating the R-10 zoning district. And here is the general and final plat for the subdivision, and if you can see there, essentially towards the end of North 2nd Avenue, towards the southern half, there's a parcel that's there that shows, or is being shown to be cut out, 0.65 acres. So that's the lot 1, essentially, or the additional lot. And staff's evaluation, both subdivision does meet all requirements set forth within the City of New Bern's land use ordinance, and all comments from the Departmental Review Committee have been addressed. And the actions needed once more, you'll be first taking a vote on the general plan, which is, again, the major subdivision ending in 974. And if the board has any questions, I'm happy to take those up this time.
Board have questions? Kendrick? No? All right.
Just one.
Sure.
What is it that makes it a major subdivision?
So unfortunately, with this situation and that we run into in the land use ordinance, anything that exceeds 5 acres, essentially, which this tract does, being subdivided, it's initially 10.15, it automatically tells us that we can't consider it as a minor. So anything that's not a minor, it moves automatically to a major. The major has to go through this process thus far. We're hoping to look at that in the upcoming land use ordinance, but that's what makes it a major.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Kendrick,
Yes.
on the remaining lot, that I just noted on the survey that there's a mobile home on there in an R10 district. Not on lot one, but
You're
on
talking about the lot that's going to be.
the 9.5 acres.
Right, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's already been existing, from what I understand. That's not
Okay.
new that I know of. So,
The plat also shows a cul-de-sac being built into phase 2, into the second part of the lot.
that's probably going to be consulted through Public Works. That's what I would assume, but I'm not aware of necessarily how they're going to proceed in the process. For us, we just focus on the subdivision part of it. So are you asking about the construction of the?
Well, I guess we'll talk about it under the final plat proposal and having access and whether it's bonded or not.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would, unfortunately, it would be a better question for Public Works. They didn't have any comments that were specific to that. I can tell you that at least thus far, I haven't received any additional comment from them.
So is that something, though, that's usually required if you're going to build a cul-de-sac or a road?
So the land use ordinance does make it to where any lot that essentially is going to have a residential development of some sort does require access to a public improved street, if I'm not mistaken. So essentially, if we receive an application and the intent is to construct something, if that road is not, that lot is not touching a public improved street, then they will not be able to build anything until there is one that it has access to.
No, I think my question is more, I know I've seen on a lot of plats that we've looked at, what is the construction of the road, what does it look like, and what are the layers of the road, all the curbing, all that stuff. And we don't, what the radius of that cul-de-sac actually is, things like that. I don't see that on here. For a final plat, for general plat, I get it.
I get you.
But for final, it's not there.
Unfortunately, I don't have any additional comment there. No one questioned it that I'm aware of as far as for the fire department or Public Works. And
Surprising.
Essentially, I can't hold anything up based off of that. I don't have anything in the land use ordinance to prevent it. I don't deal with the construction for the roadway or the cul-de-sac as well.
If I look at the aerial that you provided, it looks like that cul-de-sac is already there, but it's not a hard line on the.
And this is a 2021 aerial. I'm sorry, Mr. Kipp. I wish I had a more recent aerial, but it does look like it's partially there in the aerial. I'm not certain as to if it has further developed or not. But I would understand the intent is for that cul-de-sac to be completed, most likely, and then essentially if they're granted the subdivision based off of the approvals, then they would have to have these things in place prior to any development taking place.
Okay. Any further questions for Kendra?
I guess the question is, we're supposed to be approving a final plat that should have that kind of detail about what that road is all about. I'm a bit reticent to say I would vote yes for that, just because I think we need that kind of detail, even though Public Works didn't make the comment.
Yes, sir. I understand the concern. What I would lean on is those folks from the different agencies or departments to make those comments in terms of understanding whether or not the infrastructure is going to be complete or is necessarily there or the means to essentially establish it is there. I would have expected a comment would have been produced from whether it be the fire department or Public Works, and to my knowledge, I didn't receive one that was produced.
Okay.
So what that turns into on my side of things from a planning and zoning perspective, we just have to respectfully say that all the comments were addressed. If we don't receive a concern from those agencies or departments.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Any other comments for Kendrick? Questions? Hearing none, I will open it up to anyone in the audience that would like to speak for 3 minutes on this item. Is there anyone that would like to speak for 3 minutes? All right. Hearing none, is the applicant in the audience, and would they like to speak on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I will add, my colleague, Ms. Deanna, she just actually mentioned that cul-de-sac is built actually already.
Is built.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's right here.
Okay.
Yep, I'm working.
Yeah.
Satellite.
Generally, I get to drive around. I did not this week and get to look at that. Apologize. Okay, so that takes that off the table. though I still have a question about that procedure, but I will discuss that later. Okay, with all that done, I will turn it over to the board. On the general plan.
I move we approve the general plan as submitted for this item.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries. I'll entertain a motion on final plat.
Make a motion that we approve the final plot in accordance with our land use code.
All right, I have a
Second.
motion. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries as well. All right, moving on to item 6C, Craeberne West, Lot 1.
All right.
General plan and final plot.
And Mr. Chairman, my colleague Emerson Brown, who's in the audience, she's going to be presenting this next item.
Okay, awesome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the board. My name is Emerson Brown. I am a Planner 1 at Development Services here in the city of New Bern. Today the item that I have is Craeberne 30 West, Lot 1. And similarly to what Kendrick just did, it will be for the general plan and the final plat at the same time. And the general plan number is 002980-2024. And the final plat number is 002981-2024. For the request summary, the applicant is Thomas Engineering, PA. The owner is Warehouser NR Company. And the location is at West New Bern Parkway and Downey Drive in New Bern, North Carolina. The existing zoning is Industrial 1 or I-1. The size is 9.46 acres of a total of 110.32 total acres. For the overview, the proposed subdivision is for the creation of one additional lot. The applicants have expressed the intent to establish an office on this subdivided lot. The subject property is currently zoned in Industrial 1 or I-1. This is established as the industrial zoning district as per the City of New Bern's land use ordinance. The industrial districts are designed to accommodate enterprises engaged in the manufacturing, processing, creating, repairing, renovating, painting, cleaning, or assembling of goods, merchandises, and equipment. Here we have the vicinity map, which marks in teal the parcels, and the northmost portion of that parcel is what's going to be subdivided out. Next, similarly to Kendrick earlier, this is the buffer map, which gives us the 100 feet of buffer for those mailed notices that were sent out. Next is an aerial. This shows us what is on the ground currently on these parcels. Lastly, we have the zoning map, and as you can see, the portion that is going to be subdivided out is in the Industrial 1. Here we have the final plat, and there is one page, which is this page, and then the second page carries on over to this side. And I will leave it at this larger portion. For our staff evaluation, we did determine that the proposed subdivision meets all of the requirements that are set forth in the City of New Bern's Land Use Ordinance, and all of the comments were resolved in the Departmental Review Committee, and they have been addressed. The actions needed are to vote on the general plan, which is again that 002980. If you have any questions for me from a city employee standpoint, you are more than welcome to ask me now.
Board have any questions for Emerson?
Is this on the general plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You could do the final plan too, if you'd like.
And just in reviewing the documents that we were sent, I never saw an application for a final plat approval.
So that was included, Mr. Kipper, for the actual submittal of the application. They had checked both boxes, if I'm not mistaken. So essentially, it was done through one application, from what I can recall. But
No, the only box that's checked is general plan, and the letter from John Thomas from engineering just had the fee paid for the general plan.
I do see that now. I apologize, I'm mistaken on that. I know that they did submit for both. I can confirm that. I apologize. It may have just been missed. And it's
If
not
you confirm it,
included.
that's fine.
Yes, I can confirm that. I apologize.
Any other questions for Emerson or city staff? Okay. Hearing none. Thank you, Emerson. You did good first time. Thank you. It's not too scary coming up to talk. Does anyone in the audience like to speak on this item for 3 minutes? All right. Seeing none, how about the applicant? Does they have any comments on this item?
Good job, Emerson. I'm Bobby Billingsley. I'm the applicant. I'm with Thomas Engineering. I really don't have anything to add to what Emerson said, except for we have been approved already for the site plan for the commercial building on the site. That's the only thing I really have to add. And we did submit the 2 applications, the final plat and the general plan.
Okay.
But I'm just here to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for the applicant? No? All right. Thank you, sir. With that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Make a motion, we approve the general plan as submitted.
Second.
No? I have a motion. And we're going to say Thomas made the second on
Thank
that one. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. We'll move on to the final. Any discussion?
I move we approve the final plat as presented.
Second.
I have a motion. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion carries as well. All right, moving on to item 6D, West New Bern Townhomes, final plat.
And Mr. Chairman, my colleague Deanna Treble will be presenting that item.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about the West New Bern Townhomes final plat, which is a PUD, the Planned Unit Development titled 002978-2024. Request summary: the applicant is Weyerhaeuser and our company, represented by Tim Jackson. The owner is Weyerhaeuser Real Estate Development Company. The location is Clock Road in New Bern, North Carolina, with an existing zoning of Commercial 3, C3. The size is 4.05 acres of 40.94 total acres. The overview: the proposed planned unit development is to establish 48 lots of single-family attached townhomes. The subject property is currently zoned Commercial 3 or C3. This is established as a commercial zoning district per the City of New Bern's Land Use Ordinance. The C3 commercial district is established as a district for offices, personal services, and the retailing of durable and convenience goods. The district will generally be located on the city's major radial roads. Because these districts will be located on high-volume traffic arterials and would be subject to the review not only of local residents, but tourists and other non-local motorists, ample off-street parking, controlled traffic movement, and an appropriate appearance, including suitable planting, shall be provided. The first map is a vicinity map, and the parcels highlighted in teal are the parcels that we're discussing this evening. The development that's proposed is actually on the lower of the larger two parcels. And likewise, the surrounding area in yellow, it represents the 100-foot buffers that were the mailed notices that we are required to send about this development. This is an aerial map showing the current layout of the existing conditions, which are currently timbered. And last map is the zoning map, and as you can see on the southern portion, it is the surrounding C3. And this is the subdivision plat. And this is the proposed development showing the townhomes. For staff's evaluation, the proposed subdivision meets all requirements set forth in the City of New Bern's Land Use Ordinance, and all comments from the Departmental Review Committee have been addressed. And that concludes the presentation. Happy to answer questions.
Anybody have any questions for Diane?
Can you go back to the parcel map, please? Okay. So this strip of land on the right-hand side, is that just because it's part of the parcel as numbered? So it's all included? Because basically the subdivision goes up in the top bit, right?
That's correct, Mr. Rusty. Yep.
Okay. Interesting how that's drawn.
All the roads and everything in this finished? Is there a bonding process in place?
So I did go out when we posted this actual property with the sign. The roads were in place from what I can recall, and then we just essentially posted the sign immediately after the final plat advertisement. So from what I could tell, yes, the roads were in place.
I can confirm that too.
The structures down to the southeast, are those residents or commercial buildings?
The proposed subdivision are all townhomes.
No, I'm talking the existing ones that are down off, just to the south of the,
What's shown on the screen now?
yes,
Those are residential.
the residential in C3, okay.
Yeah, if it helps to just to make the board aware, the Public Works Department, they go out and do a further verification, just as you were mentioning about the bond work and things. They have, basically it gets transitioned over to them at a certain point where they are kind of making sure that that is being followed up on. So if there's any hiccups, they typically will reach out to me.
Okay. Any other questions for Diane?
Is this one of the things that's going to get addressed with the land use ordinance? We're talking about commercial property, to your point, right?
Yeah.
Commercial property that has residences on it, right? I know that's one of the things we've talked about
Absolutely.
resolving.
And that's a good point to make. From what I understand, I haven't been engaged in all the conversations for it. What I can tell you in my experience, we've not seen residential be allowed to go into commercial as such as what it is right now. So I do believe they're actively discussing how that's going to be handled.
Yeah, I know there's a mixed use category, which could get dicey if that gets used way too much, but
Correct.
we'll have to just see what the rest of it looks like when we get there.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Would anybody like to make any comment on this item? 3 minutes. All right. Hearing none. Would the applicant like to speak on this item?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Scott Anderson. I'm with ARC Consulting Group here on behalf of the applicant. Just a couple of quick comments. The plan that's before you does match the previously approved general subdivision plan. The streets, utility, storm drainage have been installed. The final coat of asphalt is scheduled to be put down on the streets tomorrow, pending the weather. A surety bond has been put in place for all of the improvements. So at the time that we put the surety estimate together was before we actually started construction. So there is a full surety estimate for all of the improvements, even though a lot of those have already been completed. So we do have a bond in place. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions we have? No? All right. Thank you, sir. I'll turn it over to the board for consideration.
I move we approve the plan, the final plat for West Newbern Townhomes.
Second.
All right. I have a motion. Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. Last item, item 6E. U.S. Invest LLC rezoning, and while Kendrick's coming up, I want to read on rezoning real quick. This item falls under zoning map and zoning text amendments. The board has the decision to recommend approval to finding of consistency and reasonableness, signifying the proposed amendment is consistent with any comprehensive or applicable land use plans or determined to be reasonable and in the public interest, or recommend denial and finding of inconsistency and unreasonableness, which is to be recommended to the Board of Aldermen deny the proposed amendment based on findings that it is inconsistent with any comprehensive or application land use plans and determined to be unreasonable and not in the public interest. Kendrick, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is for rezoning 002-976-2024. This is a U.S. Invest LLC rezoning. And the request summary, the applicant and owner, is U.S. Invest LLC, and in parentheses we have the personnel that's essentially the attention person for it, which is Mr. Kenneth Winrick. The location is West Pleasant Hill Drive, and currently the zoning is Agriculture 5. The request is to change the zoning district to Residential 6 or R-6. Parcel identification numbers are, for this particular property, is 8-222-204. And the size currently is 8.25 total acres. And the agricultural district, just here, I'll try to summarize briefly. As far as for this district, Agriculture 5 or A-5, it's a district that's designed for agricultural integrity of the areas, just the same way classified to allow for low density, single-family development on 5-acre minimum lots. The uses encouraged in this district are primarily agricultural or forestry related. Residential developments of 5 units or more shall comply with the cluster subdivision provision outlined in Article, I think that's 12 if I'm not mistaken, of this ordinance for the A5 agriculture district in promoting the general purposes of this ordinance. So typically, just very low density is a better summarization. And the district for residential 6 and the R-6 zoning district analysis here, R-6 residential district is designed to accommodate for single, 2, and multifamily dwellings with 6,000 square feet minimum lots for one dwelling unit and 2,000 square feet required for each additional unit. For the R-6 residential district, in the promotion, the general purposes of this ordinance are specific to some of the intent here, which is to actually encourage the use of the land for residential purposes and certain compatibility for non-residential uses. And I'm going to go ahead and proceed to the table here for the use comparison so that you can kind of take a look at that and briefly mention that there was a previous rezoning that was very similar to this exact one, which was recently approved, as far as I understand, by the Board of Aldermen, just to make that reference. So the uses essentially are one and the same from that previous zoning. That chart is particular to this one being presented before you tonight as well. Same comparisons. I'll go to the next slide here. We first start with the vicinity map, and that that is highlighted here in red. It's followed once again by our buffer map, and I'm sure you've heard it several times, but this is taken from 100 feet from property lines to give mailed notice to the adjacent owners. And that's followed by the aerial map, which again is highlighted here in red. I know it might be slightly difficult to see, so I'm sorry about that. And lastly here, the zoning map, which indicates the greenish color to symbolize Agriculture 5. And the actions needed by the board are to adopt the consistency statement, just depending on how you choose to vote, and the recommendation for the Board of Aldermen. And if the board has any questions, I'll take those at this time.
Board have any questions?
This particular piece of property, it butts up to what you would consider a high voltage power line, correct?
I don't know all the depths of it. I believe you're right in some way that there is a, I don't know if there's some type of company or power line or something to that degree that's there existing.
Looks like it's on the other side. See,
Yeah, I don't have a definitive to give you, and I don't want to tell you
Okay.
incorrectly.
I know we had a discussion about the power line last time when we rezoned that other piece of property.
There's also a substation.
Right away in mind.
Yeah.
There's a substation at the.
That's what I was going to say. I think I heard about a substation.
There's
if
a
I'm not
substation right
Yeah,
mistaken.
go to the aerial view if you can. That
The aerial.
might, yeah.
yeah,
that's
on
up-
the back of the
Yeah,
property, that's
up there.
the station.
Yeah,
I
to the
wanna
left.
say-
of-
So there's probably transmission lines that come from
Yeah.
that down.
Yeah.
It's
that
on this side of,
easement.
yeah, it's on
It's on the other side of that.
the
gravel
north side
road.
of the road.
I want to say that might be Duke, but I'm not for certain.
I think you're
it's
right.
Duke, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a gate down there. I've rode over there before. Can't get back there. Any other questions for Kendra?
And is this part of the 43 focus area as well, or 55 focus area? I can't remember which
I
one it
wish I
is.
could recall the staff report. I don't have that readily available. I believe it may be, because we do look at that. And it's
Yeah.
noted in the staff report, typically at the very bottom. when
I think
we're-
the parcel, as you mentioned, that was just approved by the Board of Aldermen, the rezoning, the one just to the right of it, I
That's
believe
right.
that's in the focus
They
area.
mentioned,
Yeah,
Yes.
you,
So I
you
believe
did put
it-
in your staff report that it is part of
Yes,
the
sir.
focus area.
Okay.
That's what I appreciate that. I was going to say, I believe it is. So.
any other questions for Kendra? All right, hearing none. One last time. Your last chance to speak on this item. Public comment, 3 minutes. Yep. All right. Is the applicant here, and would they like to speak on this item?
Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Scott Anderson, here on behalf of the applicant. Appreciate to present this opportunity to present this request to you. Again, as Kendrick mentioned, the property immediately to our east was just rezoned by the board this week. We are requesting the same zoning so that the development style will match the adjacent properties. There is an existing power line along the western property line back to the substation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Board have any questions?
Do you think that a rezoning request is more in line with your intended use than a special use request?
So the request is for the same zoning as what the two adjacent properties to our east are. So we think that keeping the zoning all of the same is the most consistent pattern for development.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'll turn it over to the board for discussion on this item. Again, we'll need a consistency statement one way or the other and a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen.
So the access out of this property is coming down to Pleasant Hill, the old brick road. And did we ever resolve in the piece that we rezoned that got rezoned last time, where that's going to?
So I can tell you, I can comment briefly on that. They did present an easement that was recorded, from what I can recall. The gentleman I don't know who exactly she was representing him, and she provided easement paperwork that showed an established access to get to that parcel.
But as I recall, it was a 50-foot easement.
On the north side.
Yeah,
As I recall,
which
it's on
is-
the north side
which
out
is
to 50.
Inadequate size-wise for their city streets.
Right.
I would have to probably investigate that further with Public Works, but I'm not 100% certain on exactly.
And that would take it out direct access onto Highway 43, right across from where the 140-some townhomes are.
Gotcha.
And there was a question at the Board of Aldermen meeting, because I was there, about the size of that road. And it was discussed that it's only 30 feet wide, and they approved it anyway. Just so you know.
Yeah, okay.
That's true.
Does that discussion tend to be more relevant when it's a building permit request?
I might be
Access
able to
point.
comment for you. So in that case, more than less, it would probably still have to deal with Public Works and trying to figure out necessarily how that's going to be established, how that's going to be done. The applicant would be advised typically that, hey, you don't have access to your property that you're attempting to rezone. That may be a concern for you down the road. We can't prevent them from submitting an application to rezone the property, but what we can do is try to advise them on some concerns or issues that they might face. And then we take it through DRC as well, so that they're informed by the actual department who's in charge for that.
Yeah, well said. Good points.
Yeah, so that'll be addressed during the general plan phase, right? Okay.
Well, at least in this case, there is a road there.
That's
Yeah.
true.
It's not landlocked like the previous
Yeah.
parcel we considered. So.
That's true. All right. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Do we have a consistency statement that we can?
Yes, I can actually bring that to you. I apologize.
That's all right. I had it once before and I lost it, so I don't know what I did with it. Oh, okay. Okay. I make a motion that we find the proposed zoning amendment to be consistent with the 2022 land use plan update and 2010 land use plan, and that we recommend to the Board of Aldermen for approval.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. On to item 7, new business. Is there any new business from the board?
I just wanted to bring up, I know a couple meetings ago we talked about having a parking working group, I'm trying to use the right words here, not committee, subcommittee, parking working group meeting, and we haven't had that yet. Part of the reason for that is I was on vacation. And additionally, in the focus group that I attended for the land use ordinance update, there was discussion about eliminating parking requirements, at least requirements for zoning, parking requirements for building applications and business applications, et cetera. There's also been other discussions I've heard in town about changes to parking in town. So as a result, I didn't really think it was the right time, and we should wait and see how all that plays out. However, I think it probably does make sense for us to get our working group together and at least establish what we plan to do at some point whenever that happens to be. So I will take the action to set up a meeting after Thanksgiving for our working group to get together and have a conversation. We did one before, but now we'll move on from there and try to make it a more regular meeting and make some progress.
Rusty, you commented at the last meeting about the parking issue. What area, was there a focus area that you were really concerned about?
So the concern that we have discussed is the fact that the last parking study that was done, at least in downtown New Bern, I don't know that there's been one done outside of downtown New Bern, but the last one done in New Bern was in 2007. And I think it was an extension of a previous parking study that was done. I've read through all those parking studies because I got involved in this 2-3 years ago. And the issue is that if you look at the data that they actually collected, it's very scarce. It's like 2 days they went out there with a couple of people in a couple of places and said, no, there's no problem. And, there's always a lot of discussion in New Bern about, well, there's plenty of parking. There's plenty of parking. And the answer is, yeah, there's a lot of parking spaces, but more than 50% of those parking spaces are leased spaces. They're not available for public use. There's also been a lot of conversations about we don't have a parking problem in New Bern, we have a walking problem because there's plenty of spaces available in the different bear lots around town, but people don't want to use them. They want to park in front of the place they want to go to, and they don't want to walk very far. And I think all of that being said, and I know that there's other discussions going on in town about, even in the MSD, about, elimination of parking and things like that. So I think, and I think what Brad and I and others have talked about is because we are the planning and zoning board, we shouldn't just do the zoning side. We should also start looking at planning for the city, and one of the things is parking. And so, what does that entail? Probably gathering, one of the ideas I came up with was gathering a bunch of volunteers and putting together a study and have people go out and actually measure how many people park in the Red Bear lot at this time of day or on a weekend or for a holiday or for an event, or try to figure it out. Do we have an issue or not?
Yeah. The thought was to kind of start downtown Ward 1, not just downtown, perhaps even over in the historic district.
Yep.
Especially you have a lot, right now you have issues with the temporary rentals and people parking on streets and that kind of stuff. And so it's not, the intent isn't to be narrowly tailored to downtown. It is intended to be broadly about Newbern, but the start would be downtown, is the thought discussion.
Well, if 2007 was the last study done, I mean, the whole complexion of businesses downtown, everything has changed dramatically. And it's
I think it's something that needs to be done in a lot of meetings that I've gone to where people say, we have a lot of parking spaces in New Bern, so people don't, they say it's not a problem. And maybe it isn't, but I think because we are the planning and zoning board, it probably makes sense for us to look at things like that.
And there is a perception there is a problem.
And I've heard a lot of, business owners and different people downtown, and I know this is not supposed to be just for downtown, but people say, there's no incentive for employees not to park on the street downtown. And I know there's a 3-hour limit now, and I know that is very well policed.
Yeah.
It is very well policed, but it still happens. And so, are there ways to incentivize employees to park somewhere else? Are there different ways to look at this and maybe make some changes? So, just as part of the planning and zoning board, it seems to make sense to do something.
And if I may bring up something on the whole scheme of things too, is I was kind of overwhelmed when we got the package for this meeting. That 186 pages was dropped on us, and I'm wondering if there isn't any, if Kendrick would have any input into, or we can have any input into what we need to see versus what we really don't need to see, to cut back on his work and our printers and everything else and our eyesight, trying to read maps and so forth, and that we can get when you're doing it in a Dropbox, that we could have a table of the sequence of the materials that we get, because sometimes I know in this last drop I had a hard time finding the break point of this flow of information to the next project.
Right.
And I just didn't know if there would be any desire to standardize a process for the dissemination of the information from Kendrick's part.
And I'm sorry, and I made the comment in the email that I like that way of delivery versus sending it all in an email, because to me that it just loads up your email box. But I will say I agree with Mr. Kipp that 186 pages in one document, my computer has a problem with that.
Yeah.
So it would probably be better if we could break it up into each individual application.
And I absolutely support both of your opinions. In this particular instance, unfortunately, I tried this from the beginning to try to tailor down, one, the workload that's on staff, secondary to that point, to try to have a more common procedure that can be easily facilitated so that you all will have an easier time understanding, just like you referenced the breaks and the differences of items. Unfortunately, we don't have a means to afford that currently. The Dropbox requires license. I believe it requires a license, or you have to sign up and pay monthly. In addition to that, all board members would have to make accounts to access said items. Because I approached that initially thinking that was a solution, and I was hopeful, but it's just unfortunate we can't supply that. And I don't know how you all would feel about trying to make accounts to be able to view said information, but that's all hinging on the point of affordability. So this was the second best guess.
As an IT guy, there's a way. But I know with the way the government works and the way you guys have everything set up, it's difficult. I got it.
I would be open to it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I applied for a job. I didn't get it. I could have changed those things. What if you broke it up by 6A, 6B, 6D, 6C?
I could probably.
You've got the one big PDF. If you broke it down to all these items on 6A or in this PDF, and all the items in 6B or in that PDF.
Or even just using the table. I mean,
or use the
Adobe
function.
allows you, I'm assuming these are made with Adobe Acrobat.
And Mr. Deering, that's a great point again. I don't have access to
I was going to say, I bet he doesn't have a
More
license for
licensing,
it.
everything IT requires license payment.
Unfortunately, yes. So what I could approach was, I guess, is similar, which is the point that I was trying to do.
Could somebody make a donation for you to get a license to the Acrobat?
It
They're
may
only
be an option.
$1,000 a year.
It may very well be an option. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible.
Okay.
It's just an unfortunate situation where I don't really have another means to put it together.
Fair enough.
And
Are
then
you
if
still
by email-
agreeable to a standard, what we need to see, that if we need to?
If you have a proposed list of the specifics, I try to include anything that may be important for you all prior to the meetings being engaged for the differences of items. So any like easement recordings and things that you may have questions on, I want you to have that information available. Sometimes what happens with the multitude of emails is it exceeds the size, and so then I have to even establish more emails and then replicate that, forewarn you that there's more coming, and it's a whole process of differences. But I'm open to anything. If there's a better solution. Believe me,
I for one
would be.
I mean, that could be something that we come up with. We decide, for rezoning requests, this is what we should get. For general and final plat approvals, this is what we should have to our disposal so that we know what to use.
that would be excellent.
Yeah, and I'll bring another instance up. Last time when we did the general plan on the West New Bern townhouses, you colored in just a portion of that parcel that we were dealing with.
Yes.
Whereas tonight, we got the whole thing again without identifying just what we were dealing with. And
Yes, sir.
there's some little things like that to create less confusion amongst us that
And I
get
definitely
confused easily.
I don't try to confuse or anything of that sort. I want to make sure that you're afforded as much information, but respective to what you need and what's pertinent so that you can make your decisions, essentially vote based off of the information you get.
Well, I do appreciate the fact that the previous speaker talked about 168 pages of drawings, and we didn't get that in our inbox as well.
Yeah.
So
I was
do
not going,
appreciate
those
that.
were more of the extensive of the different departments and agencies, so there was no relevance outside of what actually was being presented for this board. So
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, you could make a request to a couple of the members of the board to come up with a list, since we're not supposed to put together emails to everybody and amongst ourselves because it needs to be public.
I would take any input that any board member has sent to me, and I could then
Quite an idea.
either summarize it or something, and we could talk about it at the next meeting if that works for
Quite
you.
an idea.
I could work with that with no problems. If you
Okay.
put something together, I could definitely go off of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've talked about this a lot, Kendra. You guys got a lot going on over there in the city, and so yeah, maybe there are things that you're collecting and spending time on that maybe we don't need to see or whatever. And so yeah, that sounds like a great idea. We can most certainly do that. We've done a lot of organizing on this board in the past couple of years. That's good. I like it. Anything else in new business? Hearing none, Kendra, do you have any comments, staff comments?
So the only real comment, I'm hopeful, as long as there's no unforeseen, I guess, things that come about, but it appears, one, we don't have any meeting in December, so please make sure to take note of that. And it appears that we don't have a meeting in January either. We did
Interesting.
not receive any items on this last submittal for review that were pertinent to this board. So it appears that 2 months you'll get a reprieve essentially. February we'll probably circle back.
Is that subject to change?
And I will say that the only thing, I guess, that's on the line, which Madam Attorney brought up, was calendar for, I guess, this next coming year. So that does still have to be adopted. So maybe potentially for one item. So, but that would be that. It would be a relatively short meeting if it were to take place. So,
Well, we could do a meeting for that and a meeting for what we just talked about with the
Yeah, that's what I was
reorganization
gonna discuss.
of that discussion, and maybe a parking.
Maybe we talk about
something.
parking, yeah.
Would we lean, and would it be proper to say if we don't have anything in December, we push to January? That'll let us get a parking meeting and then maybe some more land use stuff that we could also perhaps discuss at that meeting. So unless there is something,
Yeah.
obviously, we'll have a meeting,
That
but if
sounds
there's
like
not.
solid plan, and I would also just encourage you to defer or go towards Mr. Goff. He is actually more engaged in the land use meeting, so
Yep.
I apologize. I don't want to give you
It's
a
okay.
date specific, but the projection, I think, is December, but it could lean in further to different months as well.
Okay.
So just get in contact. If you can reach out or email him, he should be able to provide more definitive.
Okay, all right. Sounds good.
And Mr. Chair, I'm hearing some conversation that you all might be inclined to have a meeting in January to discuss some of these items. Since we do not have a full meeting calendar to adopt tonight, you may entertain a motion to set a January regular meeting. I think customarily, this board meets the third Thursday of the month, which according to my calendar would be January 16th
Okay.
of 2025.
I'll entertain a motion to have a meeting on January 16th.
Do we want to,
I will say that I will not be available for that one. I will be out of the country for that date.
Okay,
Because the 15th is my birthday. Gotta go out of the country.
right, good for you.
how about the week before?
Yeah.
Do we want to set the calendar for the whole year, or you want to wait and do that later?
We would do that at that meeting customarily,
You would do that
right?
at that meeting, and Kendrick can bring a full calendar, and that way you can look at it and make an adjustment for holidays and those types of things.
We would
Right now,
also,
we're
we would
waiting
also,
on the holiday, I guess, calendar or holiday portion from the Board of Aldermen City Hall, essentially to process all that, to get more information about the differences of holiday dates.
okay. Does city staff have any objection to doing it a week earlier than normal? Is that a problem for?
I wouldn't have any
And
objection.
while you're looking that up, Mr. Attorney, we would also be voting on the chair of that meeting, right? Because weren't we doing yearly chair elections?
I think that's right.
I believe that's in that thing. I'll double check, but that should be an item on the agenda. Chair and vice chair we should also do, because we don't have one of those either.
So is the inclination of the board to meet the second Thursday in January?
I make a motion that we meet the second Thursday in January of 2025, which is January the 9th.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion on that item? Danielle looks a little confused on that one. Okay, no. All right. All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, we're meeting January. You guys got that
No one's
down?
in here.
Okay. All right. Cool deal. And Kendrick will email us out something beforehand. Awesome. Okay. All right. Anything else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.